Welcome to Art Estate. In this episode, I sit down with the founder of Electric Umbrella, Liam Richards.
You know, I wanted to capture real and I wanted to be in the middle of things. I didn't really know it at the time, but I really cared about storytelling.
With a background in commercial photography, photojournalism, and sports coverage, Liam shares how his career evolved from shooting for student newspapers to documenting major sporting events like the Grey Cup, breaking news, and large-scale corporate campaigns. We talk about the realities of working on the sidelines, the responsibility that comes with telling real stories, and how curiosity, adaptability, and integrity have shaped both his work and his studio over the past 2 decades. So if you're ready, let's get into this episode with Liam Richards. Well, thanks for doing this. I'm excited to chat with you. I've never had would you call yourself like a sports photographer full time?
I will call myself whatever whoever is willing to pay me to be. I will call myself that. I am definitely right. I would say definitely right now. I'm very much. I don't want to say pigeonholed, but I'm definitely known mostly for sports.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a lot of sports. Obviously, I have a pretty heavy news and media background. But I think one thing that a lot of people either forget even if like good friends or that I don't talk about because I can't advertise a lot of it is like and sorry, I'm still getting over the we. It is Electric Umbrella is just me officially, but I still say we.
Yeah.
But I do a bunch of like industrial stuff. I do lots of stuff with mining, lots of things like that. So, but obviously a lot of that stuff, you know, like I did a job in August. I got my edits to them in December. You know, so A, we sit on it for a really long time, and B, a lot of the times it's either lockdown, we can't share it, or we have to wait for them to share it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I'd say primarily, likely calling me a sports photographer, I think everyone would agree that that's definitely what fills my weeks.
Okay.
For sure.
And that's probably the work that you show the most as well, right? So people associate you with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like the issues around a lot of the corporate work we do are definitely sharing and, you know, parts of the contract. And I will be very blunt in the sense that like, I don't particularly love social media. You know, like I understand its purpose. I've always worked in social media for other people. I'm very old school. I'm very happy behind a camera. And I've had more issues on the weirdest of ways with social media than I have good things. So I used to post really heavily, and I had a bunch of editors be like, well, we don't call you because you're busy. Well, like I still want work. Like I still want new work. So, and then a lot of the media work, and particularly when that was a lot larger focus of my day to day, a lot of it's really horrible and really depressing. And there's 2 sides on it, and it didn't ever really seem right to be bragging or promoting, you know, some heavier subject matter. I kind of had the misfortune of I likely produce enough to post every day, every week. Like I have no problem with content. I'm a little bit lazy on it. And also I came into photography primarily interested in working with traditional media. So newspapers. So I saw my stuff every day. And that was the dopamine push I got, right? Was seeing my stuff in print or seeing my stuff run with a really good story online or, you know, be incorporated into some other sort of like storytelling. So to go over and share a space that I kind of fell into interest with in terms of a relaxing side, I almost don't like putting my work up because then I don't enjoy social media that much, right? I don't get the same opportunity to sit and have inspiration and be happy. So yeah, it's a weird thing.
I totally get that. And sometimes if you are producing a lot of work and you're finally sitting down to post something on social media and it's like from a few months ago, it's like you're in love with it less and almost like less excited to share it Like I feel like the work that I am most excited to share is the stuff that I most recently do. So if I like sit on it too long, I'm like, I start judging it more or just become more critical or be like, no one cares about this. Let's moving on.
I would definitely agree with I become more critical of it, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
get through it, you still have that whole like dream and upset of creating or being a part of something or collaborating. And the farther you get away from it, the more you can look at it and be like, well,
I
this
should have
light had
done
been over
this
here.
or yeah,
Yeah. Or
exactly.
like, oh, I saw, and not that I like to compare myself to other things, but I strive to be, better at all times. So you'll see something
Yeah.
else and you'll be like, why not? Why put it up now?
Right. You've
Like,
already
or something
improved
happens, right?
from
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, or something happens and you're like, I'm trying really hard to break it because we run two like Instagram accounts, one for the company and one just for my own. And I'm trying really hard. My own is definitely where most people would go to find
Mm-hmm.
out what I'm doing. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying really hard with the company, like with Electric Umbrellas, to stop worrying about chronological.
Yeah.
And it's a good time because after many decades of not having a website, I have at least 2 pages of a website with my poor, wonderful friend Brandon, who's doing all the design and back end of the website, basically emailing me once a week being like, so like, am I going to get galleries? You are a photographer, right? Like, are you going to give me some more work to put up? So
That's
that at
funny.
least is making me stop over criticizing past work
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, remembering that celebration of it.
Yeah.
And remembering that it's not really about me. Like a lot of what I didn't really expect was how much of a reminder it was that like the most important thing is the other side of the lens.
Totally. Yeah.
And maybe need a little bit of a reminder on that in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
promotion side of it or the celebrating it with other
Right.
people. So yeah.
Right.
Now you're making me feel guilty. I'm going to have to go and like schedule a bunch of posts.
Well, I make myself feel guilty because I look at my page and I'm like, man, I haven't posted in like 6 months, but oh well, that's okay. I'm okay with that. So, I'll post when I'm ready to post, but yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree with you on that.
Tell me how you started photography.
I kind of fell into it by accident, I think is the easiest way to say it. I think you'll hear a lot of people in our industry say they got lucky or they're in the right place in the right time. I will continue that sentiment and do the same thing. I didn't shoot much when I was younger. I got into photography because I was really into skateboarding. I quickly realized I was very bad at skateboarding. And if I wanted to be in skateboarding and around skateboarding, I had to find a useful skill. And getting into video at that time was expensive and annoying. And, we had wrecked all of our family's cameras some way or another. So photography was really easy to get into. So that's kind of where I got the idea. I photographed quite a bit of skateboarding for a while when I was, late teens, but I got really into music and shooting concerts. I moved from Manitoba to Saskatoon for school. And I didn't have any friends here. So I think almost the loneliness and finding things was, I ended up shooting a lot more. I couldn't get into the photo class in the university for years. But I had a lot more time on my hands and I had, access to, some cameras that I'd bought when I was shooting skateboarding and concerts. And I was bored. So I just would wander around and shoot and kind of figure out. I always joke, like, I didn't know when I learned off of like an old 70s photo handbook.
Cool.
And every page was a different like thing you could do in photography. So I just open it up randomly. Of course, didn't read it front to end because that would make learning way too easy. First camera I used was this like old Yashica. I can't even remember the model name, but based off of a Pentax like K1000, but it didn't have a light meter in it. And I was so ridiculous that instead of like, looking up an actual book where that would become really obvious, I just thought that like photographers were really good. Like you just looked at light and you're like, oh yeah, that's f4 at 500th, if I'm shooting to 400 ISO. So like, that's what I tried to do, which I mean, it failed horribly at. I was shooting, in the middle of the night while I was walking around, Saskatoon. And I kind of started making friends and a lot of them were in and around music. And so I started shooting shows here and there. And like any good, early 20s boy, there was a cute girl in one of my English classes. She found out I was shooting concerts and she said, hey, have you ever thought about talking to the Sheaf, the university newspaper? I'm doing writing for them. I know that they could use some help, particularly when it comes to concerts. And if you shoot for them, you'll get press passes and you'll be able to shoot big concerts. So I was there like in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
The photo editor at the time was a great guy, but he had no interest in organizing someone else. And at that time, I think it's still the same way with the university paper. You could only hold a job for 2 years and then you had to move on. You either had to change positions or you had to go because it's the closest thing the U of S has to a journalism program. So I think I shot like 2 shows. I shot Big Sugar, where they almost blew one of my eardrums out. And then I shot, one of the Ramones played a show here.
Sweet.
Yeah, I shot that, and those were like my first jobs with the university paper. Did a bit of work here and there. They tried to get me to shoot other stuff. And then the school year ended, and they needed a new photo editor. So with very little knowledge of technical sides, I got this photo editor job. And I came in like a bat out of hell. I was like, well, the photo editor before me, who is great, and not saying anything bad about him, didn't want to use volunteers. Well, I'm going to use all the volunteers. So it was really cool. It was a great way to like build a bit of a community. But in that, of course, everybody wanted to shoot the concerts. Nobody wanted to shoot the news events. Nobody wanted to shoot sports. So I kind of was forced to do those. And out of nowhere, I fell in love with both. There's a lot of elections. I worked that time at the university paper was just really special. I worked with writers that were collaborative, excited. My school suffered, but I did great in terms of that.
Yeah.
And they've all went on. Some of them are running Western Canada's CBC. Other ones are, the head chief editors in chiefs of, publications, and cool. A lot of them are still working. So I kind of, from that, it was just, like I said, I hate when people say it, but I was lucky. There was a bit of a changeover going on in a lot of traditional media. So I kind of stumbled into, internships with the local paper, like the Star Phoenix. Not so much because I was good, but because I was one of the only ones who was interested. And I was one of the only ones who would sit outside of an editor's door for every day for 2 weeks straight until there was an assignment. And also, oddly enough, that's also I just happened to get into corporate that way. I did a lot of work for the university while I was in university. And that was everything from, environmental portraits of researchers to headshots to event coverage to working with facilities management and shooting buildings. So I was completely in love. Every day was something different. I was constantly learning. I was constantly feeling like I was getting better because I was trying new things.
Did it also show you what kind of work you enjoyed to do and what you wanted to do more of in those early days of shooting for like the Sheaf and shooting music?
I think early on in my career, I likely focused more on what I didn't like than what I liked. I joke now, particularly with how all of a sudden waking up and being the oldest photographer in a scrum or whatever, that a lot of people around me are, I joke, they're like Pokemon. They just want to catch them all. And I think I had a bit of that where I was like, oh, I want to do news. I want to do sports. I want to, I want to do more concerts. Oh, I might as well do some macro and product photography. Oh, I think I can do corporate headshots. But I also kind of realized oh, these are the things that I don't want to do. And people, like you said, small center, people are telling me I'm going to have to do. So I was told really early on, you'll never make it as a photographer unless you're willing to do weddings and families and, studio type portraiture. And I have a lot of respect for wedding photographers, an insane amount of respect. So I say that in advance because my dislike for that came from the way I grew up and history I came in. Hilariously enough, a lot of people don't know 3 out of 4 of my parents are ministers. So I went to a lot of weddings when I was a kid, and of people I didn't know because I couldn't get a babysitter. And I saw the back end of it. I saw being a service provider in a wedding, and I didn't really know it at the time, but I really cared about storytelling. And what I didn't realize at that time while I was trying to find out what I wanted to do and what I wanted to capture real, and, I wanted to be in the middle of things, and was that at the root of it, it was storytelling, right? And sometimes they're really straightforward stories, like this game happened, these people won, it was important to them because of this, or this was this person's first goal, or whatever. And other times they're really heavy stories, they're tragedies and they're things like that. And sometimes they're, hey, we built this giant thing so that our shareholders will have more money. And I think that's what it came down to. I struggled really early on with not so much finding out what I wanted, but I struggled with, at the core of what we do, we carry around a box that's whole purpose is to objectify things. And I really, really struggled with that. Everything about a camera, all it does is you look at something and you then turn it into an object. And I didn't know how grateful I am that was always in my head, because that simple purpose really directed what I wanted to do. And I mean, I've forgotten it more times than I'd like to admit in my career, but it also really enforced the value of every image, which I think right now we're really struggling from. But I didn't expect to be drawn to sports, that's for sure. Yeah. I mean, I grew up as a little punk rock skater kid with dyed hair that got beat up by hockey players. Like, I shot football for, I should not say this, but I will. I shot football for 2 years. I didn't know what a down was. But I quickly fell in love with the fact that when someone is playing sports, and at any level, but any level that matters to them, they do not care that you're taking their photo. What you are shooting is real. And that, I think, was the driving force where I really fell in love with it, right? And I think I didn't know it, but I think that's also what really drew me into media. And that is part of the excitement and the rush I get from taking that into more commercial work.
How did you start shooting sports photography? Like, we saw you shooting at the Grey Cup this year, right? Like, with the
biggest smile ever on my face at the end of it.
Yeah. So how did that all come to be?
I mean, university paper. Like I said, nobody else wanted to shoot sports, so I had to shoot a lot of it. I found the rush of capturing important moments really addictive. I was really lucky because, like, when I was getting into sports, digital was, like, obviously around, but it was still really early. So every time a new camera came out, photos got better. And to double that up, you were able to all of a sudden see stuff from around the world. Like, I was that nerdy kid that would go to the library and look at newspapers from everywhere else. And I quickly realized that I was going straight to the sports section. And I really enjoy the technical sides of photography. I really enjoy gear. And sports was perfect for that. You're constantly pushing the envelope. You're constantly trying to do stuff. And the ADD in me loved the fact that once the game was done, you moved on to something else, right? It was a very clear, I think a lot of times, particularly when you're working in photo essays or storytelling or even single images, you work on these long-term things, right? So you come home or you finish shooting and you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, so what's going to come next? What am I going to do? And obviously with sports, like, Grey Cup, a great example, like, we got a whole season that you have a really cool story and you're thinking about that while you're shooting. But, I think it was just that, like, drive to constantly be doing stuff. I started working with the local newspaper, and my early jobs with them, they called them internships, but I was covering summer holidays. So it was a lot of sports, right? And a lot of little kid sports and a lot of small events, or these weird, like, hey, we've got an international softball tournament, but it's not like sanctioned, but we've got people from all over the world. Can you go spend 4 days at it? And I think the other thing that had a really big effect on that was a lot of the photographers that I respected and that I really looked up to were incredibly kind and incredibly encouraging to me in sport. So that had a big effect.
Yeah.
And then it worked really well schedule-wise that I could shoot sports because a lot of them are in the evenings. I worked like in retail and stuff, but even on the weekends, I could usually get to 1 or 2 games. I could get access pretty easy because we live in a small community that, is just excited to have someone excited. And then I started getting into working with the newswires. So newswire, basically like a service that provides images or writing or now video or radio to multiple different media sources across the world. And there was a hole. There's a hole in sports and I wanted to fill it. And I did everything I could to do it, including lying about having big lenses and going out and buying big lenses or renting them or using, I think the first season I shot of like Canadian football, like CFL, I shot a whole season with a manual focus 300 and just didn't tell anyone, which was so hard.
I'm sure.
But it was fun, right?
Yeah. Tell me about being on the sidelines. Like, for example, you're at the Grey Cup. Like, where do you stand? Like, are you constantly running around? Like, tell me that. Like, how does this work?
Often it doesn't. Something like the Grey Cup, there are a lot of rules. And for the most part, every sport has kind of 2 sets of rules. One that you are told, particularly like when you come to the venue or like if you're going to be working in or around a team or a league, there's just rules. You can't go here. You can't do this. You can do this. We don't want you to do this. Like, you've got to respect this. And then in sports photography, there's like very large amount of rules that are just assumed And I mean, they're really obvious, right? Like, there's a lot of respect stuff. There's a lot of things like that. So without going into like every single sport, Grey Cup, let's focus there. So Grey Cup, there's a lot of photographers from a lot of different agencies. There's multiple team photographers. Grey Cup this year was really cool. There was multiple video crews working on, behind the scenes documentaries and stuff. So they're busy sidelines. You would think, maybe is it TV that gets first priority and then the photographers? The most important thing on the field is advertising. So we work around advertising. So if you want to be a really big nerd, it's a lot easier if you're in a stadium watching a game, but you can definitely tell on TV. You'll notice that whatever side the TV is on, all the ad boards, will very seldomly see any photographer or videographer or even official in front of them, because that's the most important thing. Now, depending on who you're working for and how important you are, team photographers are usually, we get a lot of, most of the work I do now is with teams on the side, but including the Rough Riders. So you get a little bit more permission, or the rules are a little easier to bend. There's other rules in terms of like when you are moving, where you can't stop or where you can't point a camera. And a lot of that is player safety stuff. Some of it might be linked to the game or the perception of the passage of information. So like generally you don't shoot for football in between the 240s. That's where the team and the bench stand. And there's a lot going on, right? And it may not be, your head coach is watching the game, but your offensive coordinator or defensive, DB coach is sitting there talking with an iPad and stuff. And you walk by and you take a picture. It doesn't look good and it's not great. And there's there's all sorts of other factors on that. So for the Grey Cup, with that many people, there's a big meeting beforehand. And you have to be at the meeting to be able to get onto the field. Your accreditation, your pass to get onto the field is determined usually a couple weeks out. If you're going into something like, the Grey Cup or the Western or Eastern finals of the league, you'll apply for your accreditation even if your team isn't in most of the time. And if your team doesn't get in, you don't get accreditation. But it's done quite far in advance. And they will lay out the rules. Grey Cup's really cool because they'll lay out the rules and they'll actually tell you everything that's going to happen. And a lot of the people that are working there are working in teams. My team was just me and Derek Mortensen, actually, who I started the company with because he still does riders with me. And they will lay it out so that your team can kind of figure out, okay, you're going to be over here. You're going to cover halftime. And while you're doing that, I'm going to be sending photos and things like that. But they'll tell you where you're allowed to go. In Grey Cup, there's different colored bibs for a lot of the media and press photographers or videographers, what color of bib you're wearing will determine where you're allowed to go. So if someone sees you in the wrong place, it's really obvious that you're breaking the rules, and then you get kicked out. Pretty much zero tolerance. But there's very few times you have a lot of problems. It's usually like at the end when things go crazy, right? Where like, everyone knows the Gatorade dunk is going. No one can, like, you'll just be like, meh. How long until I shoot another one, right? When we're working in a team like that, because you're covering both sides, like that's the other thing that's really complicated about covering a championship. I don't really focus on the other team at all in most games, because the story is that I'm telling never has much, other than the fact that team we're playing against them.
Yeah.
But like my visual coverage of that opposing team is all linked to our interaction with them. I just said "our." You can tell I've really turned into a team photographer. But yeah, like so with press, you'll often be given like a quadrant.
Okay.
So like if there's 4 people on the field, you'll do from center to the end.
I see. Okay.
Sometimes you'll go into the end zone, sometimes you won't. Football's weird. For the most part, there isn't a lot in Canada where you don't get to move. So yeah, you do run around a lot. It's always very funny watching photographers at the end of the game or at the end of quarters when there's a play going on, because we have to kind of decide, okay, are we running all the way to the other side of the field, knowing that we're just going to have to come right back here, like in one play, or get back and then try and get inside so we can get to our computers, depending if we're working on the field, which is really rare, but becoming a little more common.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there's a lot of different rules. I mean, there are quite a few sports. I know there's some stadiums within the NFL where like the photographers aren't allowed to move. You get assigned a spot, you go there. Basketball generally here, like in the CEBL and stuff like that, we don't have assigned spots. You have assigned pecking order. So like a team or a league photographer can basically tell anyone else to move other than TV. But you don't do it, right? And you move around, but you kind of like, you don't move during a play. Hockey is all sorts of crazy. There's in a lot of, it's really venue related. So sometimes there's holes in the glass. So you may get put in that spot for a period and then you move so that everyone gets equal access. There's also usually in a lot of spaces, there's a bench in between the 2 benches that you may or may not get access to. And the same thing, I mean, you always think that you're going to lose out a position for something like that, because you're not considered as important as another photographer, or maybe another videographer. But I mean, like we lose between the bench spot most of the time because they want to put a reporter in there and cut to them once in the period, and then that means we're not allowed to like share the space with them.
Yeah.
And then there's also other sports where you're allowed to go are the most insane things. Like curling has the most insane rules about where you're allowed to be, and a lot of it is line of sight for TV or advertising.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. What kind of gear do you use for shooting sports?
I'm a Nikon guy. I have been pretty much my whole career. So in terms of on the field, usually a pretty big lens, 300 or 400, 2.8 is almost mandatory.
Okay.
I will almost, like the advice I always give to people getting into sports is just find the way to shoot the fastest shutter speed you can. So obviously your lenses, the more light they can let in. And that's day, night, anything. Obviously a lot of sports we shoot are low light, in stadiums at night or in hockey rinks, and even basketball courts are significantly harder to shoot in than a lot of the other ones. I'm pretty hilarious when it comes to sports. I am a huge fan of remotes. So having, a camera set somewhere that'll fire either when I take a shot or, with a button push, or now we even use like foot pedals. So,
interesting.
So with that, you're using lenses that are wide, right? It's like, I always laugh that, you can take the skateboarding away from the old man, but you'll never take the skateboarding out of the old man. So I own a lot of fisheyes because of skateboarding, but we use them all the time for like net cams, and sits in the back of a hockey net or something. I would say like a 70-200 is like likely what a majority of my everyday use is going to do. I know I'd love to be like a cool old school press guy and say like Leica and that I only shoot fixed lenses, but zooms really are super neat.
Yeah.
I have a pretty big habit of either being very zoomed in, big lens or ultra wide. I try really hard. I learned on a 24. I love a 24, 28, even a 20. But I shoot a lot at 14. I own a lot of stupid overlap of that range.
Yeah. It's a cool look,
because again,
though. I like it.
Yeah, and a lot of the times we're either you can't get anywhere close or you're right in the middle of it. So I'll use a 50 quite a bit here and there. And then it depends a lot on the sport. I almost always use 2 cameras, which I think a lot of people are a little bit thrown off by at first, but I don't have a whole lot of time to change lenses and stuff.
Yeah.
When I shoot football now, it's 3 cameras.
Okay.
So, I got a 400 on a monopod. That's kind of the workhorse, does most of it. 70 to 200 over one shoulder. Because if they get close, you don't really have much choice.
Yeah.
And then I didn't get a chance to ask you about our language warning on the podcast. And then we got an oh shit camera around your neck, and it's got, at least a 20, maybe wider.
Okay.
And that's when they come close. And those are the shots that get you the best. So
right.
You have success with that once, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just deal with a very sore back and neck for the whole season.
Totally.
Because of it.
Oh my God.
And then, then outside of that, in terms of sports, I think a lot of people forget that the field is a big part, but also advertising and promotion. We do almost every team that we work with. A lot of what we do is functions around, for some reason, it's still called media days.
Okay.
Where we'll do big lighting setups, or really big things. So I'm mostly pro photo, recovering Broncolor, when it comes to big lights. I like smaller modifiers, smaller octoboxes, strip lights and stuff like that. Almost every second shooter, or I hate to call them assistants, but collaborators, they're almost all of them really like big light sources. So it's a really good mix. I like hard light. Most of our guys like to use soft light. So it's always fun making a plan for those sorts of things. And if we're doing 2 separate stations, which often happens, right? Somebody will do the more standard players on white headshots, stuff like that. And then one will do something more creative.
So would that be those headshots? Is that what flashes up on the TV when they're talking about a player? Is that what we're talking about?
Now it is, yeah. So a lot of times it would have been used for a website, or back in the day, a program or something like that.
Yeah.
Or just general kind of cover your butt where you don't want them and a lot of the sports we cover, you also can't see guys' faces. So but now with budgets shrinking and just access being harder to deal, and a lot of teams running kind of their own stuff, all those headshots, a lot of that in between clips, when they show a quarterback in some hilarious position or something. And a lot of times in our media days, particularly within the CFL, they'll do the photo and the video. The reason they're called media days, they used to be because every media source would have a little station, and the players would have to go to each one of them and get a photo or talk to somebody. Now it's just the team photographers and maybe the broadcaster TSN or something is doing video.
Okay.
And that's really cool to kind of go. It's a long day for the guys,
I'm sure.
And they're usually in the middle of camp, so they're also likely super stressed out that they're fighting for their position, or
right.
Away from home or whatever. So but so a lot of times when it pops up, and then they'll also use them in wrap up things or things like that.
Okay.
So,
yeah. Tell me about your post-production. So I know that turnaround is crucial and it needs to be speedy and fast. How do you manage that, and what does it look like?
Well, the other thing I tell, particularly people getting into sports photography, is you don't have to be good, you have to be first. That's what I was taught. I hated it. Tight and bright, and don't have to be good to be first. We're hammered into me all the time. So once again, really depends on what you're doing. If we're working on press or media, we used to very much, although you'd be working beside one of your best friends, you're very much competition. So it was making sure you got the big moments and then getting it out faster than them. So that would dictate a lot in terms of your workflow. And as technology advanced and everything like that, we went from where you would seriously take your memory card out of your camera, hand it to some poor, usually young adult at best, and they would hand you a clean memory card, and they would run it back, and there'd be somebody sitting in the back room, and they'd be editing. I think one thing that from press, and even still within quite a bit of the sports we shoot, that a lot of people don't think about is the editing is one thing, but we have to caption everything. So we have to say who's in the photo, what's happening, what day it is. And so workflow becomes something that you get incredibly obsessed about. And I mean, things have changed now. Captions aren't as much. We are able to use external editors, so some things are going. But on the opposite end of it, it means you can also send pictures straight out of your camera. So like Grey Cup, me and Derek were running computers on the sidelines, which generally used to be a no-no, but we're allowed to do now. But a lot of the guys would have an editor who wasn't even there. They might be in Toronto or something like that. And they would run over and they just take a hard line and they'd plug it into, the side of their Sony or Nikon or whatever, and just push buttons on their camera and it boom, off to an FTP, and it would go, and the other guys would do it. Early on, a lot of the pro cameras always had voice commands, and a lot of people didn't know why. The voice command was typically, if you were working, you could attach a voice clip to it. So you'd say, Corey Sheets runs in a touchdown, and maybe roughly give it a time, maybe tell the score or something like that. If somebody else was in it or you couldn't identify him, you'd be like, oh, Hamilton 58 missed tackle. And you put that in, and then the guy would run it back and go. Now we do all of that. You remember everything. So I used to use the odd voice tag. I never listened to them, which was hilarious. But you learn little tricks like we use a lot in sports and news. We use a program that not a lot of people use called Photojournalism.
Oh, yes.
And it's kind of like Lightroom's catalog, but it's really fast and it doesn't edit. But it's where you write your captions. It's also really good for sending out to an FTP server or even email. I don't use the email part of it, but you can. And then there's all these stupid little things that you get really used to doing. So you'll notice not as much now that mirrorless is so big because everyone just stares through their camera, but it looks weird because they'll be on the sidelines looking into their camera with their lens pointed down. But they're what we call tagging. And most cameras will have a lock button on them, and we're pushing that. And those are the photos that we want to at least look at to edit. Back in the day, we used to call it chimping, because when digital came out, all the old film photographers would laugh because everyone would be looking at the back of their screen and they'd be showing everyone and they'd be like, ooh, chimping.
I've never heard of that.
So many dumb names. So the big one is that part of the workflow is only looking at it. And Photojournalism has this amazing feature where it only ingests or takes in the photos that you've locked. So you don't have to go look at your whole card. And you learn little tricks if you have a really good photo and but you can't really tell who it is, you try and remember shoot a picture of their number afterwards.
Got it.
That becomes really important. One of the best things that's ever been for me, particularly having covered, a bunch of international hockey tournaments and stuff where we got names that have so many vowels in a row that there's no way I could get close to it, is we can pre-make, or sometimes you can even buy, it's called code replacement. So when we're in Photojournalism, you'll hit /S for / you make your own code, and automatically it'll pop up Saskatchewan Roughriders quarterback Darian Durant. You don't have to type any of that out.
Oh.
You also pre-write a lot of your base information. When you're working within newswires, a lot of them have some really particular ways about how files are named and everything like that. So first and foremost, before you even get to editing, learning all of that is almost more important. I am still very old school in the sense that I, particularly in sports, even though I don't typically work that often in the media field, I still hold true to kind of the truth in editing. So pretty minimal, a lot of it should be right in camera. So I do shoot RAW. I will always shoot RAW. We have a couple of newswires where we're not allowed to. You have to shoot JPEG. But, get your colors right. Get a lot straightened. Hockey and football is really hard because you're turning and there's lines on the ground and everything. Lighten up maybe a little bit of dodge and burn. But that's it. Noise reduction. That's been a really interesting one. This is where I knew that I kind of was moving away from a press model because I'm using an AI-based noise denoiser. And I can't when I do that with when I work for a newswire.
And why is that?
And then generally the rule of thumb is it has to be, anything you could have done in a dark room. And even in a dark room, you can't file a picture that would be like a stack negative. And if you do something weird or creative, well, you're going to likely get torn apart if it's not great. But you have to make it really explicit in the caption. This is a double exposure that was captured in camera. You can't do it afterwards. It has to be in camera.
Okay.
And dumb little rules, right? They have some really hilarious rules. Like they won't take a lot. I don't know if it's still true, but a lot of the newswires won't take a fisheye shot because it's unnatural.
Right. It's
But
distorted.
they have no problem
yeah.
if you give them a shot with a 400-2.8 and, the focus is razor thin and the whole background is like completely blurred because, everyone's eyes see that all the time.
Looks like a Monet in the background.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So, but I mean, so really minimal. A lot of the color. The big thing, particularly I find with sports, particularly in what we're doing now, is that it's consistency. You're editing for consistency more,
right?
Particularly if you are using multiple cameras or you're shooting in situations where there is mixed lighting and stuff. You want, if someone does put up a gallery of all of the images or something like that, or I guess if someone actually did print them, you would want them to, the yellows to be the same yellow and stuff like that. But for me, at least, I'm not, and not everyone's like this. It's basically, we use Photoshop, but very, very minimally, and same with Lightroom, right? The difference being like, we have no problem, like if you got a dirty sensor cleaning out dust in the sky or anything like that, which oddly enough, sometimes you even get pellets in your camera. But, whereas if I was working press, I'd have to disclose that I'd done that.
Yeah.
And it just comes from the same as anything else. People abused it and made stuff look more dramatic or more appealing than it was in hopes of either getting more recognition or getting more play because maybe they get more money that way.
Trying to bring in their
we're really
artistry, right? Like trying to, I guess, the thing about, media and capturing sports is it's less about you and it's more about what's, like you said earlier, what's happening in front of the lens and just capturing that storytelling and taking yourself out of it,
Yeah. I mean, and on the opposite end, if I do commercial like advertising and corporate work, I'll be merging 15 pictures that are panorama and exposure fusions and straightening buildings that aren't actually straight and cleaning out making everyone's teeth like they've never had a cup of coffee or a cigarette in their life. And and everyone's well rested in those photos. So I mean it's both ends,
right?
And there are times where I do a bit of that pretty quickly, if we have a shoot that has to be, we fly up north and it has to be, I'll work on that on the plane on the way back, or if we've got some downtime at camp. But for the most part, when it comes to sports, it's really quick. And our timelines now aren't so much driven by competition or getting seen first. A lot of them are just driven by the fact that we don't have time, right? We need to the new trend right now with social media and sports is that they update the score every time there's a break. So if it's basketball, it's an update every quarter. Well, there's only like a minute and a half or 2 minute break between quarters. So you got to make a choice or you work with a team and who's going to be off the field at what time to make sure that they have something from that game to update right off the hop, or are you going to have something more generic from warm-ups and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's just a lot of planning in some ways, or having a lot. We're always like the worst. Our clients will ask us for like 2 photos and we'll give them 28 because we just get excited.
Yeah.
And we've been doing it for a long time, right? And the workflow of, particularly like if I don't have to caption something, I mean, to me that's easy. Yeah. And then other people will laugh and be like, oh, I can't believe you get that all out. But you just get used to it. It's like anything, like when you first started editing, a landscape or a headshots, and you're trying to figure out if you wanted to put a gradient in it, or if you were gonna take out the red in someone's skin. I'm sure that takes everyone way longer than it would now if you do it regularly. And it's kind of the same thing. You sadly get really used to it. We do get pushed pretty hard a lot to get things out quicker, and the problem is that a lot of times, particularly when you're working for a team or an organization, you're not just shooting the game. You're shooting fans. You're shooting sponsored events. You're shooting activations, as they call them,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And all of those eat into your time to be able to run off to a computer or even just, you know, push something out from your camera to your phone or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen someone from the media get like totally like clobbered or like ran over in the sidelines?
I got hit
Does that
once.
happen?
Yeah, it happens at least once a year. Happens a lot. I have my opinions on it, but I'll stick on being nice. I got hit once in training camp, and 100% my fault. I was shooting Husky football, and I was shooting their training camp, and I was working with a team of writers who were really involved. They were great to work with. They ran this blog called Husky Outsider, but they would give me like these lists of all the players they were going to write stories about, and it got to the point where I was like, "Can you guys just start telling me who you don't want? Because like your lists are just everyone." So the list was broken down to sections, and it had 5 receivers on it. So it's training camp, one of the few times I would go onto the field because they're just running drills and everything like that. So I get into position and I kneel down. One receiver, 2 receiver, 3, 4. I don't know where the 5th one is, but okay. So I start shooting and they're running drills. So it's just them catching balls, like fish in a barrel, super easy. And all of a sudden everything goes black and I wake up and I'm on the ground and I'm super nauseous.
Oh, no.
And as I like kind of am getting up, this receiver who I later got to know quite well, even more hilarious, is now in school to be a photographer. But he, Jade, he lifts me up and he's like, "Liam, are you okay?" And I was like, yeah, I'm all right. And I had no idea what happened. And he was the 5th receiver and his job was to backpedal into the end zone where I was, and he ran into me. I was in his way. And when he hit me, he hit the front of my lens. I think I was shooting like a 300 likely then. And it pushed my camera into my face. And I was like pretty confused. And then the trainers ran over and I got really embarrassed because I don't like
attention.
I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm not important. And he's like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I looked at him and I was like, "Are you okay? Like you roll your ankle or blow your knee out because you ran into me. Like I'll never shoot again."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." And I looked down and he's like, "Oh, you're bleeding." So my head was like, he cut my head. And I was like, "Well, I didn't get hit that hard." And I looked down and when my camera went in, the LCD had cracked on my head.
Oh my God.
So I got off the field as quickly as I could, tried to act like I was fine. And a different time, we would never do this now. And I smoked at that time. Don't smoke anymore. But I was like, I'm just going to go have a cigarette because I'm embarrassed. And as soon as I got out the front gates, I started throwing up. So I had a pretty bad concussion.
Oh,
Luckily,
no.
a really good friend of mine happened to be visiting me from my hometown, and he was a sports physiotherapist, so he took care of me for the rest of the day. But I've been lucky that I've never seen anyone get hit really bad. I've seen a lot of broken gear. I've had some broken gear. And like I once broke the collar on a big lens because an errant pass, the ball hit my monopod. And I didn't think anything of it. And then I went to put my lens down and this carbon fiber ring was completely cracked. So yeah, there's certain sports where you just like, you're safe to be safe. And there's other ones where like you're safe because otherwise you'll die.
I think I would be too scared.
When it comes to motors, that's the problem though. Like you should always be scared.
I guess.
Right? And a lot of people aren't.
Seems like it. Okay.
A lot of people they forget that it can be scary.
Yeah.
Right. But and that's another reason I love remotes, right? Because you can do stuff where you can put stuff where it isn't safe for you to stand, or it's not safe to the players or anybody else.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah. Is there a rule to how many cameras you can have set up typically? Say, for example, the Grey Cup, like you said, you had 3 cameras, was it?
3 cameras. Yeah, 3 cameras on me. Football's really hard to do remotes, right? There's nothing. I mean, your remotes in football would be like on the bench or reactionary because it's so hard.
Yeah.
Like it's so hard. I don't use a lot of remotes in there. With other sports, every game there's rules, right? And in some things there's kind of mandated requirements, like hockey. If you're putting a camera in the back of the net, it has to be, parts of it have to be soft, and it has to be able to give away if someone runs into it, so they're not running into like a sharp edge or something like that.
Yeah.
You're risking quite a bit on your camera then. Basketball, like backboard nets are likely the most well-known remotes. There are so many rules. There's rules about like how they look, if the backboard's clear, what color they are, who gets to put what where, what can interfere with everything.
What kind of cameras are these? Are they like GoPros or something? Because I can't picture what it would be.
You put up a full camera usually
on a
right?
backboard.
Like if it's
Wow.
yeah, so we use like a couple of arms. You have to use safety cables. A lot of times, if you have access to like rafters and stuff like that, and you're allowed to go up, you'll do overhead remotes.
Okay.
Hence why you also don't do them in like, it'd be awesome to do overhead remotes. I know actually there's a bunch of guys in the NFL who do overhead remotes.
Okay.
And they're really cool, but it's really hard because like your remote is never going to be your main camera. Like you're just not gonna.
It's just
You're not gonna. It's a Hail Mary, and if you get lucky, you get lucky.
Yeah.
Like I think in the last since the new year, I think I've done at least 5 remotes, and I think I've gotten maybe like 4 really great frames out of it. And the stuff I shot with the camera in my hand is, we'll be using those a lot more than anything else. But yeah, there's a lot of rules, and there's a lot of people you have to get it cleared by, right?
Okay.
Because there's everything from like, obviously the most important thing is player safety. And like, if you're dealing with a remote that would be overhead, particularly like public safety, everybody else's safety.
Yeah.
But then there's also, just basically like interfering with the game or anything like that. Like if you're dealing with basketball, you got to be really careful where stuff goes. Not so much for like the camera getting damaged, but like if a ball goes out of bounds and hits a camera, like that's not normally there, does that change the rule on that play?
I see.
And that's the last thing you'd want, right?
Yeah,
Other than obviously like somebody getting hurt.
Right.
So yeah, lots of rules. And usually there's like, you got to get it cleared by, the facility, the referees involved, sometimes even the coaches. So, yeah.
What would be your advice? Say, for example, I wanted to become like a sports photographer. What would be your advice for someone getting into it or wanting to get into it?
Like first and foremost is really thinking about the fact that photography has value. And I think in sports, this is something that the last thing we need, we already have clients and we already have people who look at sports photography and don't value it because it comes in so much and there's so many of it. But I think it's really easy when you're like, oh, I push this button and I get 9 pictures in a second or 30 now, to forget that single image that you're going to pick, you're going to edit, you're going to put up, has a lot of value. That could be the best day of someone's life. It could be the worst. And if you forget that, you're not going to make good photos. And I think the other thing that I would tell people is don't forget to have your own voice. When I taught and when I'm dealing with new sports photographers, typically our assignments will go through, what's important, figure out what's important, go to a game, shoot one thing that's important. And really the back end of that is trying to get them to think about it. Almost every new sports photographer will be, well, this guy's going to break this record, or this woman beat this person. It's very much the sport side of it. But every once in a while, you'll be like, oh, that guy who's working in the penalty box, that's his grandson that's playing or something. You find something else. So first and foremost, find something that's important. That's your first game. Your second game is like, get a photo out during the game. Because realistically, it depends if you want to shoot sports or if you want to work in sports. If you want to work in sports, start working on it. And that will get you farther and more access than anything else. If you can get a couple of photos out and you're dealing with, the team's social media, or you're dealing with the league and you're trying to get your foot in the door, or you're trying to, if you are going to try and sell stuff, even to, traditional media or some sort of something, they're going to want it as fast as possible. So just off the hop, get into that, get into organizing, get into the workflow, because the most terrifying thing ever is getting that call being like, hey, we want to hire you for this. And you're like, yeah, cool. And then you get there and you're like, I got to get out 4 photos between the two, the first and the second period. And all of a sudden you miss the second period, right? And then the most important thing to me is stop shooting a game for one photo. Newspapers are dead for a reason. Work on the game story. And that's when you've gotten comfortable enough with the kind of technical aspects of it and the skill level. And like, I hate to be a jerk, but sports isn't hard. Everybody says sports is hard, but like when you look at the things that you're dealing with, most of the time you're dealing with consistent controlled light, right? Like a hockey rink is almost the same light all the way across. Yeah, it's bad light, but you don't have to be worrying about changing your settings here and there. It's not a portrait session. It's not a, and I mean, yeah, you should be messing around with your settings and trying stuff. And so start working on telling a game story. Because that is the most rewarding thing ever. And the big reason for that is, and this is such a cheesy thing, but my really good friend who did a lot of my early tattoos when I was a teenager, he's super creative. His name's Shane. And we were talking about it. And I'd been shooting for quite a while and I was struggling. I was having a really hard time. And he's a big football fan. We were talking about the team I was working for at the time. And the team was doing really bad. And he goes, Liam, sometimes people just have bad skin. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, I'll work on somebody and their skin just won't take ink the same way that something else will. He's like, and eventually we'll get a tattoo and they'll get a great tattoo. They'll get what they want. I'll get something I'm happy with. He's like, but particularly in sports, sometimes it's just a bad game. So if you're sitting there being like, I remember shooting like WHL hockey early on. Every time I went to a game, I was like, I want to shoot a fight because I worked in the university. There's no fights. So I'd come back from a game, there'd be no fight. Or worse, there would be a fight and I didn't get a good photo of it. And that's all I would think about. And if you get into the habit of telling the game story, you're always going to find success. Because a bad game, telling the story of a bad game in good photos is likely about the most amazing thing anyone could do. So I don't know.
That's really
There's
interesting.
Not one. There's a few things.
Well, that's very helpful. I loved our conversation and there's so much more that we could talk about, but I think that you've been very gracious with your time and I really appreciate you coming on today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I warned you.
No, this
a little bit
awesome.
of caffeine and talk about photography. I'll go on forever.
It was so good. I loved it. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Artist Date. If you enjoyed our conversation, be sure to subscribe and follow along on Instagram for behind-the-scenes content and updates at Artist Date Podcast and at Nicole Romanoff Photo. You can now watch full episodes on YouTube. Just search Artist Date Podcast and hit subscribe to follow along visually. New episodes drop every Tuesday. See you next time for another inspiring conversation.